Yo, 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 yo. What's up, all you burners, stoners, and potheads? This is Weedman 420 with the Weedman 420 Chronicles. How are all you vipers doing out there? Mrs. Weedman?
Mr. Weedman?
How the hell are you?
Awesome.
Love it. Love it.
Love
awesome. It. Awesome. Love it. Hey, everybody out in the world. Hopefully you're doing great. Hopefully you're smoking some big fat doinks while you're listening to the show. We got done with Peaky Blinders.
Yeah, we did.
And that ending was something awesome.
Yeah.
And if you had a chance, everybody in the world thought you were dead. This is a little bit of a spoiler. And you actually aren't dead, but everyone in the world thinks you're dead. You can travel anywhere, totally anonymous. What would you do?
I don't know.
What would be the first thing you do?
Probably live in a different country.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just explore the world.
You want to go have a cup of coffee and a smoke and say,
Well, yeah, maybe. No, yeah. I'd start with that. A smoke of weed, not a cigarette. Yeah. Start there and then plan out my journey. Yeah.
Plan out where you're going in life. Well, Peaky Blinders was great. We're back on now the second half of Stranger Things. And tell you what, pretty good so far.
Mm-hmm.
We are on the second episode of the new half. And that was 2 hours and 20 minutes. And I think we only made it for like 45 minutes of the first part of it. And
we started
asleep.
watching it really late.
Yeah. So far, so good, though. And man, oh, man, I do love like Stranger Things. It just brings me back to the 80s and all the fun stuff that, we were that age back then. So it was awesome. So it brings you back a little bit. So Stranger Things is great. Hopefully everyone's enjoying it, whoever's watching out there. And I got a DM from somebody that watched that Floor is Lava, and they said it was kind of funny. It's a funny, stupid show. It's good.
It's cheesy, but
it's good to watch when you have nothing else to watch and you're just stoned and you don't want to think about the show. That's what that show's all about. It's just
no brain work involved.
No brain work at all. So, Ms. Weedman, you go smoke.
I
have
am.
our new gizmo.
Yeah, I am.
Go ahead and press that button.
I am. Here we go. Filling up my glass.
Filling up your glass.
We're using the wonderful vaporizer again.
The Zenko.
See you soon.
Oh, so good. And as Mrs. Weedman drinks her vape.
It's amazing.
I've been posting a lot with that gizmo. I love
really
it.
Fun.
It's just fun. It's just different. I don't know.
We've had people like stop by through the week, just here and there, and of course, Mr. Weedman brings it out and says, "Here, you got to try our new gadget." And everyone's like, "Whoa!"
Oh yeah, they're totally amazed. Can I have a sip?
Someone said, I think it was my sister. She's like, "Oh, I could put one of those on my desk and pretend like it's an aromatherapy machine."
We did have like a.
And then when people are like, "Why are you sniffing your aromatherapy so close?" She'll be like, "Oh, it just really helps." She can get away with it.
You would never know.
You would never know.
You can tell people too it's my aromatherapy thing and bring it to your office and just take a little, or sneak a little sippy sip or a nippy nip. I do like it though. It's been a lot of fun. I can't wait.
And then next thing you know, everyone's stopping by your desk, and then the boss is like, "Why does everybody suck on that aromatherapy? I thought you're supposed to just smell aromatherapy."
We were laughing about that.
Everyone's got to be on board with the secret.
Yeah, absolutely. The secret squirrel Zenko. I love it, though. It's a lot of fun. It's a nifty little gizmo that I'm taking with me everywhere I go and just showing it to people because it's just fun. It's different. No, a lot of people have never seen it before, so it whacks people's brains. Like, what the F is that? So thank you, Zenko, again for the great gift. I'm looking forward to doing the show with you guys soon. Ready to start the show?
I am ready.
Now that we had a nice sip, I'm ready to go. F1, F2, F3 strains explained. And we've had some people on the show that's talk about the overview of F1s, F2, and F3 strains in the cannabis growing industry. It's very in-depth. This is just a very easy article that I still haven't always understand what the F1, F2 strains, F3, and our friend Earl 217 has talked to me about it. He's also talked about it on the show. But it always gets confusing, especially when you're buying seeds from breeders and they mark F1, F2, F3s and all the craziness. So I wanted to do some more research on it and learn a little bit more, and I found this dope-ass article, so I'm going to read it for you. If you've ever been interested in breeding your own cannabis, there's no doubt you've come across terms like F1 strains, F2 strains, and F3s, and so on. So what is an F1 strain? What does it mean when you're getting a cannabis breeding program started and have an F1 or F2 seeds? It seems like a confusing concept at first, but WikiLeaf is here to take the mystery out of terms that get you on a confident path to create your own stable strains. And this is not only just for breeders, people that want to breed. This is also for people that are growing at home, that are buying seeds online, and you see that F generations, and understanding what they are for yourself also if you want to buy a certain breed or a certain bean to grow yourself. So not only just for breeders and creating your own strains, but also people that want to grow at home. First off, what the hell does the F mean anyway? It stands for fidal, which is a Latin origin. It means the offspring of two parents. Remember, cannabis plants are dioecious. You need a male and a female plant to create the babies. We call the parents the P1 generation, and their offspring the F1 generation. Did you know that, Mrs. Weedman? There's generationals.
I did not know that.
So when you take two P's, you get an F.
Okay. You say so.
Basically, you take two parents, right?
Yes.
And you want a female plant.
Gotcha.
Right?
Yeah.
But F1's, two P's equal an F.
Right.
Right there?
I'm really high.
Gotcha, I know.
I'm just going to go along.
When you cross two individuals from an F1 generation, you create an F2 generation. Two F2 individuals crossed together gets you an F3 generation, and so on to an F4 and F5, etc. It's just a label breeders use to keep track of how many generations a cross has been bred down in an attempt to stabilize its traits. But what do these labels mean when you are growing them? At the most basic level, you can think of it like puppies. As cannabis and canines are pretty similar in terms of breeding. The mama dog and the daddy dog are the P1 generation, and their batch of puppies would be the F1 generation. The puppies come out looking either more like their mom or more like the dad, or a mix of both. This is true for cannabis as well as for the most part. The better understanding the F1, F2 generation seeds are, let's take a look at the old school cannabis in the Netherlands. Cannabis breeding. When the first Dutch cannabis seed banks started getting serious about breeding cannabis around the 1970s, they started with landrace strains, and we've talked about landrace strains on the show before. Cannabis indica from the mountains of the Middle East and cannabis sativa varieties from Africa, as well as Asian, as well as Central and South America. When used in breeding projects, these landrace strains represented the true P1 generation. They were from genetically isolated populations that had been inbreeding for a very long time. If you had a batch of these landrace seeds, they would grow with similar traits like the plants you picked from them. These plants evolved from millennia and adapted to the specific region's climate, making their genes dominant for the traits that helped them survive. The Dutch were breeding true F1 hybrids by taking cannabis sativa and cannabis indica, crossing them together and making strains like skunk number 1. F1 strains. These F1 hybrids inherited the dominant genes from both their P1 parents. This is a genetic condition called heterosis. 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 Also known as hybrid vigor or over-dominance. The result is stronger, more robust plant with higher potency and yield than the parents used to create it. The original F1 generation was actually quite stable with little variations in traits, meaning if you planted seeds of skunk 1, you knew all the plants from those seeds would have highly potent buds that smelled like they got sprayed by a skunk. It would be a relatively uniform and genetically stable batch of seeds. To help explain all of this, let's imagine a scenario. You're stranded alone on a beautiful tropical island with 10 of those original skunk 1 seeds. Yeah, you are. With nothing else to do, you plant them all and get to growing. As those first buds appear under the tropical sun, you notice how similar they look next to each other in terms of structural height and aroma. Since you planted all the seeds, you'll have to make more for your next round. You cut out the males, but leave the strongest looking one to pollinate a few female plants. When harvest time comes, you get to enjoy some of the finest, most pungent and potent pot on the planet. You save the seeds and you start to grow another crop. F2 strains. Since you crossed a male and female from skunk 1, which is an F1 hybrid, you created the F2 generation. When you grow these seeds out, you notice the plant looks drastically different from the other one. Some are way taller, some more short and stocky. The smell different from one another too. Some have the skunky funk aroma and some are more sweet and fruity. So what's going on here? Why are all these F2 generation plants so drastically different? In the F2 generation, a genetic process called recombination takes effect with remixes. Wicka, wicka, wick. In a sense, all traits present that were passed from the P1 generation. Where you had plants in the F1 generation that were relatively similar looking to the F2s all over the place, some are tall, lanky, and take longer to ripen, a distinct trait from their sativa heritage. Others are short and stocky and their flowers finish fast, a trait inherited from the indica lineage. The other plants exhibit a new combination of these traits, tall and lanky but ripen quickly, or a medium-sized plant with larger buds with a longer flowering period and packs an aroma mixed of a fruity sativa traits and a musky indica funk. In this case, the existing traits from the P1s have been recombined in a new way, creating a unique phenotype. This is where the magic happens. If you are trying to create a new cultivar, just remember in the F2 generation, you are not creating new traits, just recombining existing traits in new and novel ways. Growing F2 generation seeds could be bad if you are not trying to breed your own cannabis. If you're trying to just grow a solid crop of buds that look more consistent, you'd want that original F1 hybrid generation seed. The F2 generation bud will just be too inconsistent due to recombination. Some seed breeders use this to their advantage, knowing it's easier for someone to just buy their seeds again than it is to take time to rebreed the genetics. But a dedicated and true cannabis breeder knows that after the F2 generation is where the selection work begins. Man, this is when we had, there's more, I'm going to read the rest, but this is when we had DVG and Umami. And this is what those guys do. This is what they do for a living. They grow weed too and sell, but they breed.
Right.
This is like, so now you're understanding what these growers, gardeners, have, and thank you, Earl, for teaching me this, gardeners, basically are doing. I wouldn't say mass production, but production, and they've created some phenomenal strains.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah. So F3 and beyond, and this is what our friend Earl does too. He breeds too. He's created some phenomenal, and he's taught me, what he does and stuff like that. Not taught me, but he's explained to me what he does, and this is what he does too. Besides grow as a caregiver, he actually learned how to breed, and he collects and breeds. It's amazing. F3 and beyond. Back to our tropical ganja paradise scenario. Let's say you make an F3 seed by selecting the most THC potent male and female. In the F3 generation, you will see more uniformity in the traits between plants with a handful of expectations. If you took the highest THC plants from the F3 generation and bred them together to make an F4 generation, you notice almost all of the plants were very potent. You have essentially created a seed that bred a true for high potency. Cannabis breeding takeaway. This much inbreeding doesn't come without some consequences, though. While only concentrating on breeding plants with high potency, you might have neglected the fact that the higher potency plant yields less and were more susceptible to disease and mold. Interesting. What's happening is a genetic condition called inbred depression. When a population has, I can't help it. It's just that movie. It's stuck in my head. I could do more lines from that movie. So when a population has been inbred enough, that detrimental recessive traits like high susceptibility to disease start to surface. While creating a plant that breeds true for one trait, you might have unintentionally created a seed that also breeds true for something unwanted. This is why it takes a keen eye with wide lenses to breed good, stable cannabis strains. There's a lot of variables to play, and unexpected surprises could possibly arise with every new cross. Today's cannabis genetics situation makes it even harder to gauge breeding outcomes, as we are mostly breeding with the hybrids of hybrids. And that's why pheno hunting is such a big thing, because people want that original generation, and you hear about it, you read about it in the mags and on in Reddit, and people just searching for like original strains to try to be able to get that. It's crazy how some of these master growers or great growers or amazing growers want to.
Well, they probably don't want the strain to die. Right. The pure strain.
Yeah,
right?
100%. Most F1 crosses made today have considerably more variation than the original F1 hybrids the Dutch made, because a large percentage of today's cannabis strains share common parents in their lineage. If you've ever crossed two of your favorite strains, you might have noticed the crazy variation of non-uniformity of traits in the seeds produced in the F1 generation. This is because we are not using the P1 landrace parents, but rather breeding hybrids with hybrids. And I was reading one of the Reddits that someone like found some old seeds, like landrace strain seeds from like the 70s.
Wow.
Someone was saying that he who knows if it's true or not, but I thought it was pretty cool if he did. Wrap it up. For the aspiring cannabis breeder, all these labels and terms can be a little daunting at first, but fear not. If you're like most of us and don't have access to landrace genetics, one way to ensure a successful breeding program is to use seeds from reputable and experienced breeders that diligently track their strains and pedigrees. This way, you can get a strong start down the path to creating your own amazing cannabis genetics, or getting feminized seeds to, as Mrs. Weedman takes a rip and she's choking. You're right there, Mrs. Weedman. Some strong stuff, huh?
Yeah.
So as we say, it's complicated, and just you got to buy. We've said this before. You got to buy from reputable sources. Know your breeders, know the genetics. I'm learning. I bought some genetics that weren't the greatest, and I was, you've heard say on other episodes too. I was young buying it. I didn't know to look for feminized seeds because I don't have a big tent. It's fun to get a male every once in a while, but it's not fun when you spend money and you get 10 seeds and 7 of them are males, and 3 of them are female, and it sucks.
Yeah.
You got it cost you $100 for that seed, for that pack. But if you got a tent like I do, a 2x4x5 tent, you want to yield every time.
You can only grow a few plants.
Right.
So if 2 of them end up being
it takes time.
Male plants.
Right.
It's like you just lost 3 weeks.
Right. And I have a bunch of reg seeds I bought, but I also now I'm just finally looking just for feminized seeds, just because I just want to grow and yield, get weed, grow and get bud. One day when I have my bigger grow, I will be able to breed and do some cloning and have some fun for myself, just experiment, see if I can do it. But right now I want to grow buds. I want to get a good yield and then go move on to the next to grow buds. So yeah, I'm moving just to better genetics of F1s and looking for it. And, with my friend Big Earl will help me out always too. So, Mrs. Weedman, this is
Mr. Weedman.
Remember I told you that, High Times has been throwing it out there lately.
Yeah.
Here's another one.
Yeah.
Tell us about it.
Hopefully I won't be coughing again.
Take bigger rips.
I'm pretty high right now, and my mind is spinning because I think we talked about the dreamy property a few weeks ago. There's just this dreamy piece of land that feeds my brain every night with ideas. So I'm in my la la land of,
especially when you get baked,
like,
you
oh
start
my God.
creating. Last night
I've got like a whole compound figured out in my brain. Anyway, okay, let's get back on track. This is what happens when you smoke. Sometimes
good thoughts.
You get really creative and you can't get back on track to what you're really supposed to be doing. You get off on these little tangents. So I have an article here. This is from John Capetta from High Times. Article is The Cannabis Industry's Identity Crisis. Our Escape Has Gone Corporate, an allegory on why life sucks right now. Well, friends, here's the sad truth. Pot ain't what it used to be for a lot of reasons. Before we get into the nitty-gritty, let's go over how many of us got here. Cannabis has long been a vibrant subculture or counterculture, a plant that seemingly brought people together, helped them forget their problems for a while. I think so. And gave many of us outsiders, or weirdos, if you will, a way to find our tribe. It hooked us all, though maybe not in the traditional addictive sense. From the love of the plant, a community grew. And while much of the world laughed at us, we championed each other. And as a result, we flourished. But good times don't last forever, and I'm sorry to say our inside joke got out, and now everybody's in on it. Many, if not all, of the most fun people I know came to me through cannabis, long before I was some High Times guy that people wanted to talk to. There's a cool factor that comes with doing your own thing, and our community exudes in that space. Some call it not giving a fuck, but to me, it's that search for originality, the act of finding yourself that's largely provided to us by the plant. Yes, you get enlightened sometimes. Whew. Well, people often say things like, weed makes people friendly. I think the truth is that it actually just makes you more comfortable with who you truly are. And that's a beautiful gift. One of the most common things I hear when interviewing those I consider real potheads, from cultivators to trappers to lifers, is that they got into the industry to fund or grow their habit. While maybe they were also attracted by what they believed to be the riches at the time, it was the ability to make it their way, their own way, that sealed the deal. We all wanted to blaze our own trail and invest in this thing that we truly loved. Most of us knew nothing about taxes or compliance. We were outlaws, rebels. It's hard to say it was always that easy. And we had our fair share of casualties, from fighting the federal prohibition and avoiding jail time to ducking into alleys to light up. It hardened us, and we earned our places in this growing economy. Now flash forward a few years. A piecemeal legalization, an insane tax structure in pretty much every state, and a whole lot of new, clean faces. What the fuck happened? Say what you will about where shit's gotten. It's hard to deny that things have largely worked out for us so far. We're not getting locked up as much. We can be more open about our passion. Cannabis brands are worth billions of dollars, and many of our icons have become kings. Fans still mob Cheech and Chong meet and greets. The Dead is still touring with one of the biggest mainstream pop stars of our time. Netflix is making shows about us. Fox News is talking about edibles. And with that, friends, we've jumped the shark. Isn't it jump the tank? Jump the ship? Jump the shark? I've never heard that before.
If a shark, I usually hear a shark jumps at you.
Sharks jump?
They jump out of the water. Yeah. You ever see a great white shark week's coming up?
They do. They twist.
Yeah.
All right. Flash forward to today. And the THC rat race is killing us. And publicists have decided microdosing is the wave. No one's making the money they're used to. And I know how frustrating it is to see a slew of new products coming to market that seem designed for anyone but you. One of the most common misconceptions about legalization is that it was going to create more space for us. I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but what we were actually making room for was them, the outsiders, those not in the know. While that may seem scary, it is important to note that this is part of the process. Growing up is uncomfortable, but one of the first things you realize in your journey to maturity is that the world is a lot bigger than you. Creating space for someone you love doesn't mean you get to just clone yourself a dozen times to enjoy 12 times as much. It means you're introducing your love to the world, and the world might not see her the same way that you do. And that's a scary thing. But recall, we were once on the outside too, and we did all right. An even scarier thing, perhaps, is all of the new players flooding the field. Not consumers, but venture capitalists and executives from other restrictive industries telling us how to sell our products. There's no shortage of new money and new interest coming in to get a slice of the pie. In order to get to the next level, we should acknowledge a basic truth. In almost all situations, people fear change. While that's far more a mental hurdle than an actual object to jump over, things are changing in a big way right now. It's natural to feel uneasy. Keep in mind that despite the turbulence, we're moving in the right direction. We'll have to learn some new tricks. We're not out of the fight, but pressure makes diamonds, and no one changes the world by staying comfortable. Remember, we weren't comfortable for a long time, and we now have home court advantage. While I might have already turned most of you off by refusing to sugarcoat the reality we're facing, the original intention of this article was to offer some suggestions that might help with this changing landscape of legal cannabis. I'm no scholar, and I'm not running your business, so think of this as a guide more than commandments. First, I know we all think corporate is code for the Death Star, but remember, if you do anything well long enough, you eventually become the man. There are very real reasons why once your success reaches unmanageable heights, people hire a team. You've got to take it to the next level, and that's what going corporate means. You probably don't know the best tax loopholes, compliance shortcuts, and that's why you hire an expert. A corporation, when built properly, is just a well-staffed group of experts with the biggest support structures necessary to tackle bigger problems. Next, and an example I make often, is that I've never had a problem taking money from rich kids. They usually don't value it as much as you will, and they can afford to take more shots if they screw up, so they're not as worried about the failure. Utilize their blessings to get your goals accomplished, whatever that may be. We will often need them to surpass the compliance hurdles legalization has placed on us. That said, be careful not to let the money dictate the conversation. Another important thing to remember is that we're all in a race to the bottom right now. As all of the new money tries to achieve scale, they are losing hundreds of millions learning the market doesn't want to buy crap and we value quality. As a real consumer, you know this. They largely don't. That will change with time. And the only thing that will retain its value through this process that they will eventually have to acknowledge and pay for is your experience, your expertise. This may mean that we're in for a few rough years, no question. It might also mean that some of you who run your own businesses will go from owners to employees, and that's a hard pill to swallow. The thing to keep in mind is you can build a much bigger ship when you don't do it alone. That's an old adage. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, build a team. And that holds especially true here. It's the corporate point again, right? Would you rather make $5 million by yourself or collect 10% of $500 million? I've written a lot about the successes of players who have succeeded largely off of the strength of the network they've built. You've got to evolve to survive. Here's my last point. Try to stick with me. Before you tear down the ideas of others, remember, we don't all have the same perspective. This is the root of why diversity is so important. While I'm not saying these new guys know what they're doing, I am saying our overconfidence can sometimes be a turnoff to outsiders who don't get us, and that can hinder us more than benefit us. Just think about how polarizing social media has gotten. We can't even mention sexism without 1,000 individual and unaffected perspectives trying to tear down the basic notion based on their personal experiences. It gets visceral. We need to remember to look outside ourselves and, when necessary, help others see your perspective from a place of understanding, not judgment. This is something I definitely need to work on myself, but I know it will help many of you as well. Ego should be all of our biggest enemies. If there's one thing cannabis lifers have in common, it's that we're in it for the long haul. We're not going anywhere. We couldn't imagine being anywhere else. While most of these fair weather fans will head to the new wave once the next billion-dollar opportunity comes along, we'll still be here. But let's not make the party.
That line hit me when I read that.
But let's not make the party we're having unattractive to outsiders, because we'll all need customers. I often joke that most of the industry's problems stem from the fact that not enough people involved in the supply chain are smoking. That's especially true for all of the new faces joining us to take advantage of the supposed gold rush. But a lot of the ones that are typically not high enough. And we can all use each other's understanding as we navigate through this trying time. I don't know about you guys, but my love of weed is one of the only things in my life I'd never have to fake. And we are finally in a time where we can celebrate that around the clock, basically anywhere. Don't forget how many people died and went to jail over cannabis. Things could be looking better than ever before. It's just a matter of perspective, and we will get there.
Great.
That was great.
Great. On fire. I'm telling you. I haven't seen them write like this in a while. Really good.
Passion.
Will a looming recession sink the cannabis industry, or will it stay afloat? You hear it all over the place. There is a possible recession, or we're in a recession, or an inflate. All that stuff we've been hearing. But is the cannabis industry foolproof? Can it dodge this? With the threat of a recession hanging over the U.S. economy, the nation's cannabis industry to be on a shakier financial ground than when the last downturn struck 2 years ago at the start of COVID. Cannabis companies weathered the 2020 coronavirus-induced recession relatively well. Well, yeah, everybody got money, and we went and bought weed. With sales booming thanks to federal stimulus checks and anxious consumers turning to cannabis for stress relief, the industry emerged relatively unscathed by the recession. This time around, though, might be a little different. Cannabis industry executives point to the rising inflation, which tends to curb consumers' purchases, as well as the lack of progress in Washington, D.C. for federal reform. Other factors are to play too. Newer state markets with limited licenses, Florida, Illinois, Massachusetts, New Jersey, New York, commonly experience relatively higher wholesale cannabis prices and less competitive landscape. Industry officials said cannabis companies in those states are better positioned to weather a downturn than operating in a more mature market such as Colorado, Oregon, and Washington State. Cannabis businesses in those states face overproduction, falling wholesale prices, and stiff competition. As a result, a recession could play out differently depending on the state cannabis market. Every state in its own story with a different regulatory structure, said Kevin Bush, chief financial officer for Denver-based Sweet Leaf Madison Capital. George Mantrelli, CEO of Bespoke Financial, of Los Angeles commercial lender that works with cannabis companies, said cannabis stands out as one of the only industries where businesses are experiencing deflation. Mantrelli expects that most companies to mature markets won't have a banner year, but should be able to survive until the end of 2023 or 2024. That's the baseline expectation, he added. Yeah, cannabis stocks are shit right now. I mean, I keep on buying them, but because I know one day they'll go back up. But they are poop right now. Dim prospects for reform. Jordan Lambs, chief executive officer of Moxie, a vertically integrated cannabis company based in Long Beach, California, said the lack of momentum for cannabis reform and the federal level is making it harder for companies to find capital. Coupled with the falling prices and increased costs stemming from inflation. Falling prices in some states, but there's some states that there isn't falling prices. There's like Illinois, which is like one of the most expensive places to buy weed. They have been the same, expensive, also because of taxes, of course, makes them even more expensive. But yes, I mean, prices here in Illinois have maintained and have been like pretty high and stayed there. So, coupled with falling prices, increased stemming from inflation, and it's probably one of the more challenging seasons the industry has seen. He said it's a double whammy. Like cannabis companies, cannabis consumers are feeling the pinch of rising costs by way of gas and food prices among inflation pressures. Here's the thing. I used to smoke cigs, and a friend of mine said to me, when people have no money, they still find the money to buy the things they want.
Yep.
In my brokest time of my life, I still bought a pack of cigs every couple of days.
And then your busiest calendar date, you can always squeeze something in if you want to go.
Always.
Right?
Right?
Always.
So people will find the money to buy what they want. They might not buy it from a dispensary. They might not buy it from in the legal market. They'll go to the traditional market. They're going to get their weed. You just don't know about it. And you ain't dating it. So this is my opinion. We do think consumers would be less likely to try new products and stay with brands they know, like, and trust, offer greater value for the dollar, he said. Sometimes, I mean, we talk about going to dispensaries because you know where your weed's coming from. It's supposedly quality, which is another thing I'm hearing right now in the market. People are pissed off because quality is just not there. You're still going to get your weed, and it might not be from the dispensary. Just might not. And sometimes, you're going to get your weed. It just doesn't matter. However, using the spirits and tobacco industry as an anecdotal guideline, historically, these industries have experienced fairly steady demand during a recession. CEO of Peltfast, Jason Vicksteady, a sales marketing agency for the cannabis industry based in Irvine, California, agreed if you took alcohol beverages, economic downturns typically do not hurt the industry, he said. Instead, what we see the consumers looking for is value alternatives. I would expect the same trend in cannabis during the economic slowdown. Government officials and economists, meanwhile, offer a wide range of predictions about the possibility of prolonged downturn in the U.S. Now versus 2020, the industry was booming in 2020. COVID recession and the pandemic lockdowns of 2020. A lot of people were smoking more weed. Then consumers were flush with cash from government stimulus checks and had fewer options for spending the discretionary income, given the travel shut down and restaurants shuttered. We saw this in the early days of COVID, when brands and retailers quickly adapted to new remote workflows, socially distanced retail models, and changing government rules. The cannabis industry is well positioned to succeed regardless of the headwinds and faces, economic or otherwise. Tips for companies to survive. The key to success in the cannabis industry is don't panic. Don't panic. It'll all be okay. That's from Mr. Weedman. The prices go down as markets mature, Cohen said. If you can't be good, efficient operator, then you'll die, he said. if you want to weather this out, you need to think about the reality of where this market is headed. Nirup Krishnamurthy, Chief Operating Officer of Schwazi, a Denver-based cannabis company, agreed, saying cannabis companies must keep their cost under control. Yes, and also, you know what, though? It's very hard for these companies when they have everything on the line, all their own money, with no help from banks, and taxes are fucking outrageous. Taxes they got to charge the consumer, and also taxes they get charged. So, I mean, yes, like I said, don't panic, but it's hard for people to keep costs under control when it costs so much. So, John Yang, CEO, founder of San Francisco-based cannabis tech firm Trees, said cannabis companies should be reviewing their profitability and margins via hard data and industry trends. People need to focus on operations, on what they're doing, he said. See, this is where I get a little frustrated, too, is because you got all these experts. I just call them experts because they kind of think they are. They just think it's all about data and trends, man. In the end of this all, before it went legal and stores were opening up and data companies were finding all this fucking data and keeping track of what you bought in the stores and how you algorithm this and tech that and bullshit this. In the end, everybody, we just need to free the plant and grow your own fucking smoke, and you wouldn't be a part of all this. You'd be growing it like tomatoes, and you want to be just a number, and you want to be 20% more than they think they need to buy, or I need to do this. Great, I'm glad people are part of the system, and they can open up an old store and make a living off of it. But like I said, $1 billion for one company to make when you can have 500 people making $250,000 a year and having a good lifestyle for themselves. That's how I feel about all these numbers and data and bullshit. Data and tracking don't mean shit to weed. Never forget that, everybody. Weed is your friend. I'm ending with that. Cats and dogs, we got one. What happened when our dogs ate some weed?
And they got punchy. Paco, I think we've talked about this. I don't want to repeat an old story, but our older dog, not Yuki, but our past dogs in their older years, from time to time would get a little dropping of something when we were making an edible or making a butter. And it's pretty funny. I mean, they hadn't gotten enough that they were
just enough
that they were acting funny, and it was entertaining, and they were not at harm. But there are those times where you just don't know what your dog or cat consumed as far as cannabis goes, and so we got a little article about your dog or cat just ate your cannabis. What should you do first? Pets are companions with whom many owners tend to share most things. Dogs and cats are predominantly involved in their daily activities of their owners. This is brought on instances where these pets end up eating more than what was given to them on their tray. The question of what to do when your pet eats weed is a good question for all pet owners to know the answer to. We're going to address some of the primary things to do when your pet eats weed and also answer if there's a need to see the vet. The first action of many pet owners when they realize their pet has consumed weed is to panic. While this action is very natural, obviously it's not going to help. You need to worry about the well-being of your pet. Some of the things that cannot be done in a panic state, so stay calm. After this has been done, oh my God, I can't even read. There are some things, after you're calm, there are some things that you must confirm before deciding whether or not you want to take your pet to the vet. Sorry. Determine the type of cannabis eaten. There are different types of cannabis products that your pets can get their hands on. It is therefore important that you carefully ascertain what the pet has consumed to know how best to handle it. The most common type of weed pets consume are buds. They are also more dangerous to pets than the leaves of the plant. Likewise, infused oils and butters from the leaves of the plant contain high levels of THC and are dangerous to pets. Weed products that contain mainly CBD are less detrimental to them because the THC is what majorly affects them in a negative way. Cannabis edibles are very common nowadays, and they can be easily consumed by your pets. Surprisingly, some of the most common edibles in circulation pose great risk when consumed by pets. That would be chocolate ones because then it's a double whammy, right?
Double.
This risk is not limited to THC alone, but there's also ingredients like chocolate, and that can be more dangerous for dogs especially. This means pot brownies can easily send your pet to the vet, so it's best to keep them away. Gummies and candy edibles are also very detrimental to the health of dogs because they could contain xylitol, which is very risky and possibly fatal to dogs. Take note of the symptoms of weed toxicity. Pet owners who have cannabis products in the house must be capable of identifying symptoms of weed toxicity in their pets. This is because it is possible for the pet to have consumed the weed already without leaving any traces. At this point, the symptoms of weed toxicity are the best bet to inform the pet owner on the best course of action. Cannabis toxicity in pets is a very serious condition, and it must be treated as such. 2 cases of deaths of dogs after cannabis consumption in Colorado between 2005 and 10 show how detrimental it can be. That doesn't sound super serious. There's 2 recorded dog deaths over a 5-year period.
Well, just like a cannabis has never killed anybody.
Right. I mean,
2 dog
don't get me
deaths,
wrong.
It's still sad.
It's sad, and you still have to be careful, but maybe, yeah, I don't know. Okay, moving on. Pets begin to show signs of weed consumption very early, depending on the type of product consumed. Dogs or cats that consume buds, flour, oil, or butter will show signs within an hour. When pets consume edibles, it takes longer for the symptoms to show. It can take as long as 3 hours for the first set of symptoms to manifest. Like humans, animals react differently to weed due to physical and biological variations. The first set of symptoms common to pets when they consume is a depressed or lethargic state. Some animals, on the other hand, are known to become overexcited and full of anxiety. The second set of symptoms are gastrointestinal disturbances after the THC has been absorbed into their bloodstream. Diarrhea, drooling, vomiting are common to animals as THC is being stored due to its solubility in fats. Other associated symptoms include dilated pupils, tremors, low body temperature, leaking urine, slow heart rate, and low body temperature. Some of these symptoms might not manifest, but once 2 or 3 of them start to manifest, it should be a guide for you on what to do next. Take your pet to the vet. Cannabis toxicity is a very serious issue that must not be taken lightly by any pet owner. The first series of actions are majorly supportive, as the final base of actions to help the pet must be done by the vet. Irregular heart rate and vomiting are strong signs that cannabis toxicity is bad, and without debate, that pet must be taken to the vet. A seizure is worse and must be treated as an emergency. Once the dog gets to the vet, the first thing that will be done is a physical examination and checking their vitals. Afterward, the decision will be made whether to hospitalize the pet, dependent upon the pet's response to medical interventions. While the pet is at the vet, its condition is treated on a case-to-case basis, meaning that the symptoms are treated individually through supportive care. If weed is discovered to have been consumed early, the veterinarian may try to just induce vomiting. This will delay and maybe eliminate the onset of symptoms. In cases where symptoms have developed, the pet after hospitalization is then administered fluids, anti-nausea medication, and cardiovascular support. For pets that consume brownies, chocolate is very harmful. Their treatment may be more aggressive. They will need to possibly use activated charcoal, anticonvulsants, antiarrhythmics, and fluid therapy. This further shows why it's important to get the pet to the vet once ingestion and symptoms are established. Bottom line, we have shown that once ingestion of weed is obvious in pets, it's important to take responsibility for some things. The owner must determine whether the pet ingested, what he ingested, and keep an eye out for symptoms. After, it's paramount that the pet gets to the vet to ensure optimum therapy is established. I know somebody very well who is a vet tech. I want to ask for some personal insight on that.
Yeah.
Like how frequently people bring their pet in for that.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's really common. I guess the big problem is that dogs, if it's kind of like a kid, they don't know that there's cannabis in it, so they eat. Well, an animal has no control over quantity. If there's 10 brownies, they're going to eat them all.
Yeah.
A kid, if there's a bunch of cookies, they might eat 1 or 2. So that can be a
Tree
problem.
or 4.
Yeah, or 5. So that could really be a problem.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying don't take it serious. I am saying follow up with your vet, but I don't know. I would think if it's a small amount, like when our dogs had a very small amount, it was
Paco was fucked
pretty
up.
funny. He was just like just nervous. He was so nervous and punchy. Oh my gosh.
I'm very pissed off at these nitwits, Tucker Carlson, Laura Ingraham, and all these people talking about bringing back reefer madness again, and talking about the person that shot everybody at Highland Park and the mass murders that have been going on lately. They're blaming reefer. They're saying reefer madness, cannabis is one of the reasons why these
nuts.
kids or people are going on mass shooting sprees. I like to say to both of you and all your friends, you suck. You suck because it's a lie. They're showing like the scariest of scary pictures, saying that cannabis or marijuana or reefer is doing this to them.
It's just a distraction.
Right.
It's a distraction.
Making them psychosis and making them see weird things. They're just liars. They're liars. Just both of them. You should be knocked off the air. You suck. That's all I got to say. Illinois adult use cannabis sales in June decreased 100 to 126.8 million in June. That's not that bad. I mean, fuck, man. It ain't depressing at all when you're down 2.3%. You're still doing 126 million, but the sales are all coming in that weekend of July anyway. So you're going to see a huge July like we did last year. So, I mean, come on. And then you had 710. So the party just started in July, all. Arkansas activists set to turn and double the signatures needed to put cannabis legalization on the ballot. Good for you, Arkansas. There's a lot of states right now. Oklahoma group submits signatures for adult use cannabis legalization. Good for you, Oklahoma. Nebraska activists meet raw signature goal for medical cannabis ballot initiatives as campaign makes final push. Good for you, Nebraska. And here's another one, too. Just read earlier today. South Dakota once again had to go get the 20-something thousand signatures to be put on the ballot for recreational. They already won last time, and their governor scratched it off and just said, no, your votes don't matter. So they had to do it again, and it's going to have to go on the ballot again. So North Dakota, get ready because they're going to win. Here's sucks. WNBA star Brittany Greer pleads guilty to cannabis charges as Russia calls out U.S. hypocrisy in maintaining criminalization. Sad. For one cartridge or 2 cartridges, you might have to do 10 years.
Jeez.
Yeah, we're not on Russia's good side right now, so I don't care what Biden tries to do.
They're holding it against her.
Yeah, 100%. They need to let her go, Russia. That has nothing to do with her. What's going on with our government and your government? That poor person didn't do anything wrong. She's a basketball player. She needed a little cannabis to help her sleep at night. And come on, man. Don't do that. She went to your country to play basketball in a sign of good faith. So just because you're pissed off at our government doesn't mean you need to be pissed off at us. So D.C. mayor signs bill to let medical cannabis patients self-certify without doctors, sidestepping federal blockade. There you go, D.C. mayor. I like her. Here's cool. Here's something really cool. Cannabis, the word cannabis itself, replaces marijuana in Washington State's legal jargon starting in August.
Yay.
That's fucking awesome. As we all know, the marijuana spelled with the H is a sign of racism. Started in 1937 by Harry Anslinger. It was all racism. I've told the story many a time. So get it off and put cannabis. I love it. Love it. So happy. I did my little reel earlier, and I talked about blunts versus joints, and I told my story with the first time I smoked a blunt when I was in the Bronx. Philly's blunt. Just my first time. I was 17 in the school parking lot. Flew up there, met some buddies, and we went and got a dime bag. And I'm like, "What is this blunt you're talking about?" I smoke joints, and they're like, "Oh man, this is you never." I'm like, "No man, I don't know what fucking Philly blunt is. It's like the cheap plastic wrap cigars, had a little Philly wrap around it, and the wrapping was a little sweet, and you'd break it open, crack, throw your weed in there, just leave a little bit of cigar tobacco in there, and weed, roll it up and smoke it, maybe blast it. That was the first time I ever smoked one in the school parking lot, and when I went to go visit friends in the Bronx. Crazy. So blunts versus joints.
Yeah.
What do you need to know?
I actually have my favorite, like early weed experience with a joint was we were babysitting. My girlfriend's dad got remarried and they were having a baby. And then she had a half brother. Yeah. And so, no, she had half siblings, a little brother and sister, and then the mom was pregnant. So her dad brought us up to their cottage with the two older siblings, and then he went back to Chicago with his wife to have this baby. And we were in high school, so we were taking care of the little ones, keeping them busy for the week while they had the baby and got the baby home. So sure enough, one of my girlfriends got like a probably a dime bag, right? Couple buds for us for the weekend or the week. And we rolled a joint, and me and Vicky sat on this bed in the bedroom, and across from the bed was like a cabin, right? So it was all dark wood and red and black plaid. And we're sitting on this bed staring at the window or at the mirror. And it was like we were so high, it was like an out of body. I think we sat there for like an hour and we're like, what if that's not really us? What if we are in the sky and we're just looking down and the people in the mirror are really us and we're not really oh my God, we were so high. That was my favorite, like one of the best get high experiences when I was a kid. So anyway, we have a story here on blunts versus joints. Everything you need to know about cannabis roll-ups. Knowing the difference between joints and blunts will help you get the most out of your cannabis experience. Here's everything you need to know about the difference between the two. There are countless ways to enjoy smoking cannabis. You can smoke weed out of a bong or a pipe. You can mix ground cannabis with tobacco to make spliffs. You can even ingest your pot through edibles. But no method of getting stoned is more popular, easy, and time efficient than joints and blunts. I'll start off by saying that it all comes down to personal preference. But I've been a cannabis enthusiast for many years at this point, and the majority of other stoners I bump shoulders with prefer joints and blunts more so than any other method of smoking. So why are blunts and joints such a preferred way to toke up when you want to smoke? In this article, we'll be diving into the difference between joints and blunts, the pros and cons of smoking blunts and joints, and the loads of other useful information for both the casual and serious toker. Well, the blunt or joint experience. While I can only speak from personal and anecdotal evidence, the experience between these is vastly different, even if the two are relatively close to each other from an outward appearance. But let me drop my thoughts on the matter so that we can get a bird's eye view. Smoking a joint. Joints are typically rolled up in white or tan papers that are light and thin, meaning they tend to burn at a much quicker pace compared to blunts. Joints typically tend to have less weed rolled up in them as well, sometimes as little as 2 grams, which also decreases the amount of burn time. The benefit here is that joints tend to be much more flexible and transportable. What I mean by this is that you can often roll joints on the go in buses, parks, walkways, wherever. And because of the lighter cannabis amount, they also mix well with other leaves, such as tobacco, to make a spliff. So sure, they're not as much of a party as a blunt, but they make up for it in their portability. So what are the pros of smoking a joint? Well, the flexibility to smoke them on the go and the option to lace them with a pinch of tobacco is usually enough to sway many people toward making joints their favorite method of smoking. An extra benefit of joints is that they are far more common and available, and you can easily find pre-rolled joints at most common dispensaries. The cons of smoking joints are that unless you roll them very well or maybe include a filter, the flimsy paper you use tends to make smoking the tail end fairly tough. This often leads to wasted weed, burnt fingers, and harsh smoking experiences. Smoking a blunt, on the other hand. By and large, blunts offer much more of a party. When you're looking to sink into the couch or settle into a 64 race cup in Mario Karts, blunts are the preferred method to go. Blunts are typically rolled thicker than joints, meaning you can fill them with more ground cannabis. And because the weed inside of them is packed more densely, blunts typically burn slower compared to joints. Unless you get a pre-roll from a dispensary, geez, they pack those so tight, they're like little bricks.
When they're rolled like that,
Yeah.
they suck. Yeah,
they don't smoke. The effect is elongated even further by third-party coatings, glues, and different materials that also reduce the speed at which blunts tend to burn. So it's more like a cigar. The pros of smoking blunts are that they burn more slowly and can pack far more serious punch. And because blunts are typically rolled from emptied out cigars or specialty papers, it is often easier to smoke using flavored blunt wraps. Oh, we have. Yeah, we've done that. Yeah. Which adds an extra party quality to the smoking experience. Definitely party. I mean, yeah, they're much bigger. The cons of smoking blunts are that they are quite the commitment. You can roll a lot of ground weed or shake into a blunt, and you better be prepared to smoke it all in one sitting. Because the weed is packed too densely in the blunt wrapper, the inner core will continue to burn, much like a conventional cigarette would. Which means that when you're not puffing, your blunt is still burning. Blunts are lavish, but not for the frugal smoker. Does the burn time of cannabis differ? Now that we've broken down some of the pros and cons of smoking both blunts and joints, let's dive into exactly how much mileage you can expect to get out of your weed when you smoke each. Granted, it's important to keep in mind that all of the following numbers are open to variation because factors such as dryness, size, strain, paper, and more can all affect how slowly your smoke will burn. But anyways, let's dive into the burn times of blunts versus joints. The burn time on a joint ranges between roughly 5 and 15 minutes, with smaller joints consisting of only a quarter gram burnt fairly quickly, with larger joints to take upwards of 15 minutes or longer. These times may also fluctuate more if you are passing the joint around, as the direct inhalation will burn the flower faster than if it was allowed to rest in between tokes. Blunts will take a bit longer to burn, and one can expect to spend up to 25 minutes smoking a blunt. The density in which blunt flower is packed means that it burns slower, though more consistently, which leads to these longer smoking times. The final wrap, blunt versus joint or spliff. Once again, I want to reiterate the difference between the two forms of smoking is entirely subjective. So while I personally have my own favorite way of smoking when it comes to joints versus blunts, that doesn't mean that I'm 100% correct or that you're entirely wrong. What's most important is that you understand the difference between smoking blunts and joints so that you can make an educated decision on how you want to roll up your product. That being said, I'm a total joint guy. A regular joint on a sunny afternoon is an awesome way to spend a summer day. But if you want a real plot twist, I will say that the winner of the argument isn't joints or blunts, but spliffs. A little tobacco in your joint, and you're good to go, no matter the endeavor. Where blunts are usually a solid punch in the face that leave me floored and unable to move, spliffs give me just a slight head high that energizes me for the rest of the day. Rolling blunts is fun, but blunts are an incredibly hefty investment. And if you're a humble writer like myself, spliffs and joints are the move for sure.
Blunts are great when you're like with a group.
A group, yeah.
Awesome. So much fun. Who doesn't like a good blunt? I love a good blunt. International news, is weed legal in Poland? Always wondered that. We don't talk much about Poland when it comes to cannabis, but recreational cannabis is not legal in Poland. And the plant is still considered a narcotic. They have very strict laws and prohibition laws in Poland. Poland has a reputation for conservative country in Europe, but they do have a medical program that was started in 2017. The medical program does allow you to get a card. I think you can buy cannabis in 1,500 pharmacies. But these are more readily available in urban areas than the rural ones. Medical patients are responsible for 100% of the cost of medication, making it cost prohibitive to many. You can get penalties. If you get busted with cannabis illegally, you can do 3 to 12 years. Oof. Is CBD legal in Poland? Yes, it's not a controlled substance in Poland. You can find CBD and CBD products for sale, including flour, oils, tinctures, and food additives. Crazy. Can you grow your own weed? No. Visiting Poland? Don't get caught with it. That's all I got to say. Music.
Yep.
How do you create on cannabis?
Well, I can create on cannabis.
You can. Music?
There's certain strains that get me super creative.
Music? You can
I can't create music. What are we talking about here?
I don't know if I could truly, really create on cannabis. I can come up with really good ideas.
That's really creative.
Is that creative?
Yeah.
Well, then that's fine. Then I can come up with some good ideas. Yeah. I have.
Yeah.
A lot of Weedman 420.
We actually had a listener reach out to us today and say, hey, are you guys ever going to start up like a Spotify with all the songs that you talk about? Well, here we are with another song in reference to cannabis. So we are going to work on getting a Spotify.
I've been posting stories every day, like 4 or 5 stories, and I've been putting music to my story.
Yeah.
Like it has to match. It has to match. So if y'all,
we'll get a playlist together.
yeah. So I've been putting a lot of stories lately because I've been finding a lot of fun stuff. But I've been making sure, like I posted one with Charlie Brown and Snoopy, and they got their weed from Scooby. So I put Scooby Doo with Scooby Doo music on there. Scooby Doo, where are you?
Oh my god.
We got some work to do now. Go ahead, tell us how to create, because I'm baked.
The best strain for creating music, according to one producer. Multi-platinum producer and cannabis and psychedelic advocate for trauma healing, Jonathan Hay, recruited love and hip-hop star Solo Lucci for Drake's song Marvin's Room. Recorded in Dallas, Texas, the Drake reimagined track falls under the new jazz genre, which blends elements of jazz. You like that? Elements of jazz. Which blends elements of jazz. Now I'm jazz. Which blends elements of jazz and house music. Sounds good. With the song strategically released during LGBTQ Pride Month, executive producer Daniela Carter, a trans activist, wants to bring awareness to Texas anti-trans laws and how it's deeply disrupting and hurting the marginalized trans community. The Cannabis Connection. My main agenda with making music is using the sound, vibration, and energy to help bring awareness to social issues ranging from LGBTQ inclusion to cannabis legislation, where under federal law, use of cannabis is still illegal in Texas. Hay told Benzinga, "It's truly serendipitous that I've been constantly burning the Afghani Bull Rider strain during the recording process of this song and entire album, unaware that Drake is involved in a cannabis company called Bull Rider with OVO co-founder Noah Shabib." Drake's original recording of Marvin's Room was released 11 years ago this month and received global acclaim by music critics such as Ann Powers of NPR, who said the track taps into the magnetic but dangerous spirits of Marvin Gaye. Not only his seduction skills, but his self-doubt, the vulnerability that made his music so profound, and which eventually derailed him. Recording artist and TV personality Solo Lucci commented, "We have a tastefully mesmerizing jazz and house rendition of a classic. Marvin's Room is part of the forthcoming album, Wish You Were Jazz, which will be released by the famous Fat Beats Records. In the album, record producer Jonathan Hay looks to reclaim the top of the Billboard jazz charts. Last year, award-winning journalist Dawn Ennis also wrote for Forbes about Hay's Nirvana Reimagined project with a trans twist. The vinyl LP for Nirvana Reimagined is being released this year through Fat Beats Records, too. Marvin's Room Reimagined was a team effort that included collaborators Justin Bowler from Breakthrough, King Frazier, the Hellraiser, Matt Berman, Danny Darko, and Dai Long. We'll post a link to the song on our social platforms.
Sweet.
Yeah. So what is that strain? Have we ever smoked that strain? Bull Rider?
No.
Afghani Bull Rider?
No.
No.
If anybody's got a nug, send it our way.
So, I didn't realize that Drake was involved in a cannabis company.
Yeah, I mean, so many
Bull
artists.
Rider.
I was just reading an article too, like, not talking about it this week, but a lot of the stars, international stars who've gotten in cannabis, are they really truly making money at it or not? I got an article I'll probably talk about soon on that one. So Neil deGrasse Tyson wonders what other plants can get you high that people just haven't tried smoking yet.
No.
Neil deGrasse, he's that astrophysics whose expertise lies in the cosmos and beyond. On an episode of his podcast, Star Talk, Tyson and Harvard University neuroscientist Stacy Gerber talked about cannabis has been used for psychoactive properties for thousands of years. It got Tyson thinking, what kind of plant might still be out there, or fungi that we don't know about? Untapped psychedelic potential. How many plants out there remain undiscovered simply because we don't have enough people saying, now let's smoke that, let's smoke this, let's smoke this? He mused. I mean, there's got to be. Yeah, but there's no angels in those leaves. So, but they're saying there's huge potential, and there's 600 species of plants that have been lost in the past 250 years alone. So who would have known? Maybe not to smoke it or psychedelic, but maybe a healing plant that we missed out on. that's like, something that could have cured a disease that we don't know about. But mushrooms are a big thing too, so we'll see. Good for you, Neil deGrasse Tyson. Mrs. Weedman,
Mr. Weedman.
you got anything else to say?
Nope.
No?
You got anything?
Yes. Hey,
Yeah.
everybody out in the world. Thank you for listening. Thank you for all the DMs. Thank you for liking stuff we do. We appreciate you. I appreciate you. Yuki appreciates you. We appreciate you. Just being a part of this craziness. Man, crazy. Love it. Been a lot of fun. I look forward to doing this show every week. It's the only thing that keeps me sane. Everybody out there, we love you in the world. Peace be with you all. As Paulie always says, smoke smart. Puff, puffing away.
Puff, puff, pass.